Hi, this is Amy Kiefner with Inspired You Coaching and Consulting. Today I'm interviewing my friend Dennis Pierce, and it's going to be a little bit of a twist on my typical Amy the Asks the Expert interview because we're going to talk to Dennis about his career, but also how he pivoted in 2020. So, Dennis, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm excited to talk to you. Let's start with how you chose your major in college. That's kind of how I start talking about careers.
Sure, terrific. So I graduated from Illinois with a degree in business economics, and I chose economics because I've always been a big fan of business. I love business. Of course, my father was a bank executive for 40 years, very successful, and I was always interested in all the different dynamics that go into all types of businesses. So business economics with a liberal arts background as well, so that I was able to also study the various uh, topics, the different studies or courses on human behavior.
Love it. So, then what was your first job out of college?
So, ironically, I ended up in the financial services industry. I was a sales rep for Deluxe check printers. And so immediately left Champaign, went up to Chicago, and had a couple of different sales territories for Deluxe for about 4 years.
And what was your transition into another career?
Well, that's a terrific question. So, while I was at Deluxe, I learned so much. Very traditional, very conservative banking industry. Not a lot of change. A lot of regulation. Not a lot of change inside the banking industry. But what I found was, for all of the training that I received with Deluxe, my clientele was basically banks, savings and loans, and credit unions. So there wasn't a big variety among my clients, my customers. So at that point, realizing that I wasn't going to change the world one industry at a time, I bought a one-way ticket around the world, flew around the world for a year just backpacking, and came back to begin changing the world one person at a time.
And how are you doing that? Or how did you do that? Let's not go into the present. Let's go into like that career that you had in sales.
Sure, sure. So I came back and went to work for a small printing company on the north side of Chicago, for which, again, very grateful for the opportunity. And with that, began networking, began going back to the people that I had worked with while at Deluxe. And I had a tremendous customer base and also a lot of different subsidiaries inside of Deluxe that I was able to sell for. And with that, I made great contact with a friend of mine, Dave Hoyer, who referred me to another friend who was in a startup mode with Alco Management Services that was just beginning to sell outsourcing, back office services to all sorts of clients. And so I began that courtship, and a year later found myself at Alco Management Services as one of their strategic account executives.
And then from there, you became very successful. And let's talk about that.
Well, it's ironic, or it was, I guess, fascinating to me, the fact that going to work for Alco was this very startup, very entrepreneurial approach, right? But was part of a holding company, Alco Standard, which then chose to move into operating an operating company under the umbrella of Icon Office Solutions, which was very successful for a very long time. And so I was there growing with them, moved from Chicago out to the Seattle area back in 1996, and just continued to grow with the company. And so it was exciting. I ended up working 26 years for Alco, Icon, Rico, as Rico acquired Icon back in 2008. And people would say, how did you work 26 years at the same company? To which my response is, I didn't. I really worked for several different companies because it was so dynamic and so fluid, always changing. I'll forever be grateful for all that I learned during that tenure. I worked with so many great mentors. I worked with so many great divisions, starting up different divisions, and so much to learn, which kind of has been part of my journey.
Yeah, it's been to hear your journey has been really fun for me to listen to because we both became coaches in 2020. So
Mhm.
let's talk about why you decided what happened in 2020 for you. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So during the course of my career, the company restacked and reorged several times. And 2020 was no different. Just as the pandemic was coming in, we were restructuring again. And at that point, made the decision that it was time to think about what's next for me at this point in my career. I've been there, as I said, for 26 years and was really digging deep to understand my why, understand what drives me. What did I want to do? What was that legacy that I wanted to leave behind or that I want to leave behind? And it really came back to working with a career coach. And with that career coach, talking about, where do I see myself? Am I an individual contributor? Do I see myself, continuing in a leadership type of role? And during the course of that discovery, really come to discover that what drives me is the ability to impact several different areas, several different people, and the ripple effect that that causes. And so for me, it was never a question of, what I wanted to do. It was how I was going to do it. Um, so I'd say that at that point, then I made the decision that I was going to go into business for myself and begin the coaching, because that truly is the most exciting part of what I enjoyed about managing was people, getting to know people, getting to understand what drove them, and then applying my experience to hopefully augment what they were trying to accomplish and accelerating what they wanted to accomplish.
I love that story because I love being a career coach myself, and I was not yours. Let's put it that way. But
If I would have known.
no, did your company provide one for you during the riff?
They did. They did.
Okay.
So began working, and that was really also eye-opening. Terrific mentor in Maggie Helms. So I'll give her a shout out because I really I am grateful, and I appreciate everybody's insight, right? Everybody's experiences. And during the course of my interactions with her, became vulnerable because I realized it was very hard for me to come back to the fact that, again, my position had been eliminated. What did I want to do? I'm at another crossroad. Um, and she shed the light of how many people have called you looking for help, looking for some sort of assistance, some sort of guidance during the course of your career. And I said, well, several people. And she said, and how did you respond, or how did you react to that? And I said, I'd do anything I could to help them. Didn't take a lot for me, and I was happy to do it. Right. And then she said, how many people do you think would do that for you? I said, I don't know. That's a good question. So I really was just in a period of introspection, like most people were during 2020. But really at that point, I realized I have a terrific network, and I just needed to get out and start talking to people. And that's where it really kind of rose as I began to make this path toward coaching, that I received all the feedback from so many different people saying that is exactly what you should be doing, because it's, your style, your experience, and your personality, and the studies that I had done really kind of served that. So that's how I came to make the decision.
And one of the things I like to touch on is because the difference between sometimes men and women is that women handle challenges a little bit differently. We talk to our girlfriends, and men tend to kind of like hole up and not want to express those things. So when you said use the word vulnerable with Maggie, that's amazing. Uh, can you expound upon that a little bit about how you were able to open up in that way?
Yeah, it's with Maggie and with the career coach. I mean, this is the benefits of working with an external resource, right? Whether that's somebody that's being provided to you, or somebody you've gone out and you've contracted with. But that outsider expertise or that outsider perspective really is helpful and very conversational. A good coach is going to make you comfortable, and you'll feel comfortable sharing, just same, no different than a therapist or any other professional, your pharmacist, whomever, right? So it's important that you're comfortable and begin having that dialogue. And as I'm having that dialogue with Maggie, it really, for me at least, it opened up that, what, I can think differently. I can think big, and I can do this. I'm going to go for this. Right. So but I think it comes back to it begins with your inner core. If you're comfortable with who you are and you have the confidence, or you have the conviction. If you feel that you must do something, you've got to pursue that wholeheartedly. And we should all have a must. We should all have a why, and go after that, because, as they say, this isn't a dress rehearsal. We've got one shot at this. And it really comes back to, and I've done that throughout my life. When I bought the ticket around the world, I wasn't sure where I was going to go. I wasn't sure who I was going to. I started doing all my homework on the countries that I was going to, and everybody was sharing their contacts with me. But at the same time, probably some of the best advice that I received before that trip was this English guy that I had met up with says, and I'm scratching notes feverishly, these different towns and these different phone numbers, these different phone codes. And he says, mate, you're going to be just fine. You're going to make your own friends. I never opened that book of lists, but I had it with me, right? So but that's just it. If you're going to pursue something, you should have something that you're absolutely pursuing, and you should go at that wholeheartedly, no matter what aspect of your life, personal, professional. But we all need that conviction because we've just got one shot. So go after it.
I love that. I think that's what 2020 did for a lot of people who, whether you lost your job, those of us in our later second half of life, not later, but second half, really had to make some changes. And I had that, like me, welcomed that opportunity in that time to really figure out what I wanted for myself. And while I looked into coaching and fell into coaching, I may pivot even next year or next week. But being able to figure out what I am passionate about through
Mhm.
my coach as well was really instrumental in finding happiness in a way.
Excellent. Well, and it really, to that point, life is dynamic, whether it's your personal life, your priorities shift, same with business. If you're not changing, really, you're growing stagnant, you're falling behind. And so that is that in that introspection really is critical on a regular basis, not just when a pandemic is thrust upon us or a job is taken away or eliminated, or you know death of a loved one, something like it shouldn't take something like that. It should be something that we're in touch with at all times, because we will shift, we will pivot, and we need to be in touch with what it is that is driving us.
What advice would you have for someone who was affected in 2020 in their late 40s, maybe 50s, to give them some advice?
I would absolutely suggest seeking a professional. And there are all sorts of coaches out there. There's all sorts of resources. I will also say that, the state, I'm out here in Seattle, in the Seattle area. So I can speak to the state of Washington. I'm certain that the state of Illinois is the same. But there are a tremendous amount of programs through, your libraries, through the state. There are all sorts of professional resources that are afforded people through their health benefits plans or what have you, through their employers, even those that may be currently gainfully employed, but also trying to figure out if they want to pivot, right, if they want to do something differently. So there is no shortage of resources out there. And that, I like to say, the scariest place is between your ears. I mean, because it's we can count ourselves in or count ourselves out of so many different ideas. And really, a third party, somebody who's going to come in with an objective point of view, is tremendously beneficial in that type of arrangement. And if you're talking about, coaching, life coaching, or personal trainer or an executive coach, somebody who's going to help make sure that you're accountable. That's important, because we can have the greatest ideas, but without a plan, it's just a wish, right? And chances are it's not going to happen.
The funniest thing is like this interview was not going to be a plug for coaching at all. However, because we're both coaches, like this is fun to talk about. But this was really we came upon this because I watched one of your recent podcasts, and which is fantastic. I'm going to share that here, talking about leadership coaching, which is what you specialize in. I do not. What do you think during this pandemic makes a leader stand out these days?
Well, I think it all comes back to, and I'll even take a step back from that. Everything that in life kind of presents us with this binary approach, right? Either it's an issue or problem, or it's an opportunity. And so I think with the pandemic, I mean, there's a long list of reasons for everybody to feel that the odds are stacked against them. All of a sudden, everything business was shut down, personal lives were shut down, all of a sudden we were disconnected. I think over the last 18 months, people have realized more than ever how important as human beings we have to have a personal connection. And for me, I think from a coaching standpoint, I think that the most critical attribute is that personality and that ability to connect with people on a personal level. That is probably the most valuable as in whatever situation you're tackling or encountering. I think that ability to seek the help of others and being able to connect with others, because this was a game changer for everybody on all levels. And I think that's really to come out of this. I look at this as an opportunity, and now we've all had the opportunity to eliminate our commute for the most part. We all finally learned how to embrace technology. I've been speaking to global customers for 20 years about digital transformation, and remarkably, 2 out of 3 still weren't contemplating it or taking action on it back in March or February of 2020, a study that I'd seen with Deloitte. But in March, I'm sure the other 2/3 were thinking, what have I been missing? I really wish I'd done my homework. So the fact is that's afforded us the time for this reflection, for this introspection. And so hopefully now we've learned more about ourselves. And at the same time, if we're chartered with the responsibilities of others' lives, others' careers, then we need to check in on them. We need to understand what's driving them today, because I can guarantee that what's driving them today is probably very, very different than a couple of months ago, and certainly a year or so ago.
One of the things that you said in your podcast was that every leader should be looking at their employee like a new employee, even if they've been there for years. Can you expand upon that? Because that was brilliant.
Well, thank you. That's that's a big word to follow up to. Um, well, it's because I think that my success in business, managing people, and I had teams of 7, 10, several hundred. And during the course of that, I was able to make a connection and truly get to know each and every one of those employees. And because I made that effort and they appreciated that, I was genuinely interested in what it is they had to say, and I wanted to keep that to business, but I wasn't limited to business. And I know that for HR, that can be a dangerous path. But at the same time, people understood that I was interested in what they were all about. And as a result, by understanding what they're about, I was able to paint this beautiful picture. I'd take a team and have all these complementary resources on the team. And everybody knew what the other person's strength was, and everybody enjoyed it. You'd have a team meeting and the collaboration was just amazing, right? So I think that really gives us, going in now, understanding there's been a shift as we connect with our teams. They'll appreciate that we're asking, not just because, hey, how are you doing? Are you healthy? Is the family healthy? But really understanding what's going on. I mean, in many cases, they might be in the early stages of their career and they're not quite sure. Nobody's seen anything like this. They might be in the middle part or the latter part of their careers. But each and every one of them has been affected. And as a leader, as a manager, director, VP, what have you, we need to understand what that's all about. That's our responsibility. If you're in the position of managing people and you're not going to manage to that level, chances are it's going to be a very short path. It will not be nearly as successful as you will be understanding each and every one of those team members.
Yeah, I just thought it was so great because um, you can never know how everybody was affected last year, and assume that that, oh well, they have kids and now they're homeschooling, and so I know that. Well, you really don't know all the background. Maybe somebody else got sick in their family. So to treat them as I'm just learning about you again because you've been through a lot in 2020. I just thought that was so great. So that's why I
Well,
call it.
it's well, and it's one of those that can be, it may open up a can of worms, with a path that you may not want to hear, but it's important that you do hear, because it is going to help you to understand. And if need be, it may require a pivot for that person and understanding how you might help them move into maybe a more fitting role.
Mhm.
But at least you're out in front of it, versus all of a sudden you're noticing this detachment, and you can't quite, you're trying to win this person back, and you never had the chance to win that person back. But right person, right job. I mean, that was always my mantra. But I think this really gives us the supreme excuse to get to the root of that.
Well, and I have been completely obsessed with changing the workplace and the well-being of the employee in the workplace during 2021 and studying a lot. And the companies that are really taking this seriously are going to be the ones who are going to be successful going forward. And those who aren't taking mental and physical and well-being health seriously are going to be in the, at the bottom of the pile.
Right, right. There's a real demand for talent. I mean, you had more people going into business for themselves. 4.4 million new businesses were started in 2020. Can you believe that? And that's like astronomically higher than any other year previously. So even with the pandemic, even with the shutdown, you had 4 million people starting businesses, new businesses. Now you take that, and at the same time, you have a lot of people that came into a crossroad during the pandemic and said, you know what, there's a lot of people 50 plus that have just chosen and said, you know what, I'm in a position, market's done well, my investments have done well, I'm not going back to work, right? And so all of a sudden, the sheer number of experienced leadership, experienced management has gotten smaller and smaller. Now, there's also this amazing pool of talent out there that in many ways is on a fast track. Here's this opportunity coming. And at the same time, these large companies, especially in the tech space, are trying to keep up with the competition. I mean, you can only pour so much into that leadership, that leadership and development aspect of your business. I mean, somebody has to develop these emerging leaders. They want that. The tendency is, and hiring people, as many people as I have over the years, I mean, the idea is that it's a 2 to 3 to 4 year plan, and comp plans are built that way around vesting over 3 or 4 years, with stock options, things of that nature. You really need to be thinking about, I want to attract the best talent. I want to develop and nurture that talent and retain that talent. What are you going to do? Because that cost of turnover is an opportunity missed. And at the same time, it's incredibly expensive in the long run.
Yeah, so to wrap up a little bit today, because we're talking about everything and you are a leadership coach, what do you like about coaching?
I like the one-on-one time that I'm able to spend with my clients. But more importantly, I relish the opportunity of the ripple effect. And the fact, if I can help shape, help influence my clients' leadership style and the impact that they have on their team of 7, 10, hundreds of people, right? All that positive energy and all that positive influence and all of those efforts, in sync with one another. I mean, the ripple effect is incredible. And that leader has now become a mentor. That leader has established and illustrated for those in their charter what good looks like. And so now we're raising the bar. So, a rising tide raises all boats. So my goal and what I love most is the ability to have that kind of influence over people.
Love it. Any last parting words that you want to share, whether it be about careers or 2020 leadership coaching, anything that you'd like to share?
I think what I would like to share, I think most important is that people need to drive toward what they want. And I think there's so many. I recently read the book Essentialism by Greg McKeown, and really talks about eliminating the trivial and focus on the most important things, the most vital, right? And I can't emphasize enough that our most valuable resource is our time and how we choose to spend that time. I will say that with technology, there are so many distractions. And that's really, if I had a pet peeve, that would be it. Seeing, a room of wonderful people, this huge rainbow of all these different people, and everybody's face is in their phone. That drives me bananas because there's so much experience and there's so many stories and there's so much to learn from all the people around us, and we're all distracted, right? So figure out what it is, and that's not easy. Follow your passion, everybody says that, but try to get to the root of what really excites you, what fuels your energy and fuels your drive every day, and then pursue that. Build a plan, a simple plan. It doesn't have to be an extravagant plan, but go after it. because you've only got one shot. And that's, there are a million reasons to not do something. There's only one reason to do what you want, and that's you.
And I also would say that even if you're in a job that you enjoy and don't want to leave, but you're having trouble with a coworker or a boss, it's not the end of, there's ways to get around that. There's whether you go into a leadership coach or a career coach or anybody, there's ways to stay happy in your job and you're there most of your life. 90,000 hours, I think the average American or imagine average person spends at work. So why would you not want to make that the best time of your day?
Right. Well, as they say, a job without culture is just a place to go to work. And so you need to nurture and, be the change that you want to see in the world, right? So if you're not feeling that at this point, it's incumbent on you. Your development plan is really on you. And I mean, we used to talk about that, in corporate America. It's because nobody else is going to take responsibility for you. You need to take that responsibility. So if you don't see that culture or you're not finding that culture, figure out what you can do to help drive that culture inside your organization. Talk to your director, your manager, right? Start talking about things that you might want to see different on your team. So be a voice, take action, and no one's gonna fault you for that. But take action. Don't simply live with the status quo because you can drive the change. You just have to take that first step.
I love that. And I think that is how I need to end this one because that was fantastic. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you.
My pleasure.